All right, thanks for still being there listening to the DayBreak Show on Rockcity 101.9 FM, the voice of the people. This morning we are looking at our economy. Last week, really, we had almost the entire economies in the country, those who are managing our economy in the 36 states and the federal capital. Here in the state capital, trying to provide solutions on what they call the National Finance and Economic Development Council, the NAFED. Well, if what they've come out will be a solution to our problem, we are yet to see it. But one thing that I'm sure all of us will want is to see a speedy recovery. Maybe I should say to be soonest recover of our economy. That's why this morning we have a renowned economist with us. Is an industrialist, a columnist. He said he's not an economic expert. I want to agree with him for this period. We have Mr. Henry Boyo in the studio. All right, Mr. Boyo, you'll be talking about this excess liquidity, the role of the central bank and the banks in what excess liquidity means. First, I still want us to delve more into how ab initio we had excess liquidity. But before then, there's this argument, there's this debate. One of the solutions we've been told is that if you want a better manager for the central bank and our economy, we should not bring somebody from the banking sector to do so, because more often they take the interest of their own constituents, the bank first, and that's why maybe this excess liquidity is coming up. Where do you stand on this position?
I do believe that there is the real possibility, of course, that somebody coming from the banking sector would want to protect his constituency, so to speak. But that would be an unfair position, because that means you are condemning everybody who comes from the banking system, and you are saying that they don't have the courage to do what is right. I think all you need is the courage to do what is right. It's not really important whether you are an ex-banker or you're an... Put it this way, we have had ex-bankers and we have had professors, and they have all failed us. So what we should be looking for are serious-minded people who are honest and straightforward. Of course, with some education, but I don't think you need much more than that.
All right.
Okay. The what seems to be on everyone's lips is recession. Recession, and people are sharply divided as regards when we may likely get out of it. Do you have any inkling as regards when it could be the shortest time possible for Nigeria to get out of recession?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball and I don't practice those kind of sciences. But having said that, it is meaningful to expect that if you want to bring about any result, you have to approach a solution from the area of the causes of your problem, the cause or causes of your problem. So you should not really be talking yet in terms of whether it is 1 month, 1 year, 18 months, or whatever, when you have not identified the cause of the problem. If you make those projections without identifying the cause of the problem, you are either being mischievous or you are truly ignorant. Because at the end of the day, you have to recognize that the main problem is that of excess liquidity. Or put it this way, the main problem is protecting inflation, making sure that inflation does not go haywire, because inflation going haywire means we are all dead in the long run. Your money will not buy anything. You cannot, producers cannot produce anything, because as soon as they produce, you get the market, the price has gone up, and ultimately there's no activity. So once you recognize, and this is something that the CBN doesn't want the public to latch on to, because they would start asking, Mr. Central Bank, how come that you have been mopping excess liquidity forever. For as long as I remember, for over 30 years or whatever. You are constantly mopping this, as if to say this. Where is this excess money coming? Where is the Agbomagbe bank that produces this money? Because it is because you are trying to protect the economy from inflation that you keep mopping up excess liquidity, not minding the collateral impact of doing that. And the collateral impact of doing that is that you are making sure that the banks do not lend to the real, you are consciously making sure that the banks do not lend to the real sector, because you believe that if the banks were lending all the money they had to the real sector, which would have been a good thing, they would what? They would fuel inflation, because there will be so much money in the system chasing too few goods in the interim. So you will definitely need to say, why does this excess liquidity come, and why should the central bank also deceive the people by blaming the banks and say the banks are not lending to the real sector, when the CBN is the real culprit, because the CBN is tempting the banks with high interest rates to part with their money for the CBN to sterilize. For example, to show you how really tragic this is, in November last year, even before the CBN knew what the federal government budget was going to be, the CBN had put out a notice that in 2016, this year, they hoped to be able to mop up 6 trillion naira, that is 6,000 billion naira, from the system. In other words, they were predicting already that they are going to remove 6,000 billion out of the system so that it will not be available for spending. You will take it out from the hands of the bank, notwithstanding they will pay interest for the banks to part with that money to the CBN. And it's not as if the CBN is going to use that money for any intervention purposes or anything like that. It's only to reduce the amount of surplus naira, so that inflation, if that surplus naira was left in the system, we wouldn't be talking of just inflation of 20%, we'll be talking of inflation of 50, 60, 70, 80%. So it is totally unfortunate that the CBN would instead tell the people that the banks would not lend to the real sector, when the CBN is the real McCoy that is making it impossible. So the CBN said, we are going to mop up 6 trillion naira from the economy. And guess what? What was the budget of the federal government? 6.1 or 6.2 trillion naira. So while the government was planning that in 2016, in December last year, that we are going to put in 6 trillion naira, either in terms of recurrent expenditure or capital expenditure, we're going to put in money, and that money would provide people with the source of economic activity and things like that. The CBN was also simultaneously planning that as soon as this 6 trillion go in there, I must take it out, because if I don't take it out, inflation will go to 30, 40, 50%. So you can imagine, if anyone tells you now that, oh, we are going to be out of recession in so and so, without addressing this issue, the person must certainly be.
All right, Mr. Boyo, let me then ask you, as it is now, or as such today, is it that the government, federal government in particular, is not doing enough to revive the economy to take us out of recession?
Look, you cannot say the central government, the federal government is not. You have to say, you see, there's very little. There's a limited amount this federal government can do with regards to taking us out of the economy, out of the bad economy. Because why? The total amount the central bank, where the federal government is going to spend in 2016 is 6 point something trillion naira. 6 point something trillion naira, according to the budget, it's only about less than $20 billion. And we are supposed to be an economy that should be talking of $1 trillion economy, $1 trillion economy. Yeah, and the input of the federal government in a year is $18 billion, which is nothing. It is the real sector that has the potential to actualize this $1 trillion. And the real sector will actualize it by the availability of credit from the banks. That is why the banks are even allowed to create money by themselves. Okay, and you say, how does the bank create money? See, if the bank has 1 naira, okay, and the central bank says you must have a cash reserve requirement to the banks of 10%, it means that the same bank that has only 1 naira deposit can lend out 10 naira. Okay, so if on the other hand the CBN says your cash reserve ratio is reserve requirement is must be 20%. It means that if the bank has 20 naira, it can lend out what? 80 naira. So by that token of what they call the cash reserve requirement, you can control money supply. But the CBN has chosen not to go down that path, because that path does not pay the banks. It prefers to do what? To mop up excess liquidity and pay 10%, 12% to the banks for the money that is borrowed. So consequently, you find that it is the government itself has very limited ability to say we are going to drive the economy without the cooperation of the central bank, because the indices that run any economy anywhere, inflation, cost of funds, because inflation is going at about 17-18% or something like that, you'll find that the cost of funds would also rise, because the CBN would say my monetary policy rate must be higher or close to inflation, because if it isn't, how do you expect anyone to say I am going to put money in the bank, or I'm going to buy government treasury bills or whatever, at the same time inflation is going higher than the amount that so if he gets 15%, for example, as the return on the treasury bills he buys at the end of the year, and meanwhile inflation has gone to 20%, it means he has actually lost 5%. So inflation and cost of funds go hand in hand. So you will understand that if inflation is at 20%, cost of funds cannot be less than 20-25% or thereabouts. So, and those two are disruptive to industry.
Now, Mr. Boyo, before we open the studio lines, I want your very honest opinion.
I've been honest all along.
No, on this, I don't.
Yes, that assumes that I've not been honest in other ones.
I don't want you to judge this. What is your take on the so-called debate and calls for the sale of national assets to raise funds?
I have always maintained that the issue in the country, or the problems with the country, is not lack of money, but excess money. We have too much money, both in the dollar terms and the naira terms. At least in the naira terms, I've explained to you that you always have excess money. So why are you talking of no money? So it's you guys should clear your minds about that. You know, that's it's a ruse. There's so much. If you don't have so much money, then why are you borrowing money you don't need? Money you're going to sterilize, and you're prepared to pay as much as 15% for it, and for which the banks are going to get almost 500 billion naira or 600 billion naira. So you must understand from the word go that as far as this is concerned, it is not the amount of money. There is too much money. If you ask the central bank now, explain to you why central bank is the real McCoy in the area of creation of economic activity, because the federal government only has 6 trillion naira to spend. But the central bank, in collaboration with the bank and the ability of the banks, the official ability given to the banks to be able to create money by the modulation of the cash reserve ratio, cash requirement, or whatever, that is where the action is. But the action cannot be, how would I say it, supportive, so long as the indices of cost of funds also remain out of gear. There is no economy anywhere that is successful in the world where you would have inflation above 2 or 3%, and the local monetary policy rate, which determines the cost of funds to the real sector, going above 4 or 5%. So if you really want to be, you say, I want to be an eagle, you don't start comparing your performance with that of a duck. And the eagles of this world, their inflation rates never more than 2%, ours is 16-17%. The central bank's MPR is usually less than 2%, in some cases even negative, you know. Meanwhile, our MPR is 14%. An MPR at 14% means that the banks, if they have to borrow from the central bank at any time, they would have to pay 14%. So if the banks are borrowing at 14% from the central bank, and they have to lend to the real sector, how much would they? So you can understand that all these things are all related. An economy is an integrated whole. It's not, oh, exchange rate should be this. No. Inflation, exchange rate, and the cost of funds, they all work together. And some wise economists will tell you, you have to choose one or the other. If they tell you that next time, ask them, which one did they choose in England? Which one did they choose in? No, they can be harmoniously put together. In the UK and elsewhere where the economies are successful, inflation is less than 2%. NPR is negative. So exchange rate is stable. So what are you talking about that, oh, it cannot happen here because it's impossible? That they tell you that to deceive you, because they know you won't interrogate it and they know that you won't think about it. But these things I'm telling you are true. The CBN doesn't deny. I challenge you to ask the CBN one question. What is your greatest problem? And they'll tell you the management of excess liquidity. Because
What about the activities of these Niger Delta people on our oil sector?
put it this way, uh, even when the Niger Delta militants were not blowing up your pipelines and things like that, was your economy good? Was inflation to 1 or 2%
Yeah, but
as
our
best practice?
exchange was not as this was not this bad.
No, that's the point I made earlier.
But
That
it appeared that we had what could relatively be
no,
described
that's
as
what I explained that earlier.
as a
That we
stable exchange.
no, don't get it wrong. I told you earlier that even when you had fantastic supply of dollars, did it improve your exchange rate? No. So even if the Niger Delta boys are not doing what they are doing and you continue to earn your dollars, it will be the same thing, because why? There is excess liquid. Let me tell you something. I've spoken a little bit of inflation. I've spoken a little bit of interest rate as very critical indices when you want to run an economy. In best practice economies elsewhere, where young people are running to, inflation is usually less than 2%. So that in 10 years, the total inflation is 20%. So you can conserve money, the value of your money. Cost of funds at 14% NPR and 27% to the real sector, it doesn't work. Exchange rate, okay? You have a situation where if you had so much naira chasing less quantum of dollars, what do you think would happen? The price of the dollar would go up, and not only that, you even have accommodated within your own system an auction system. In other words, the CBN that's supposed to be the custodian of the naira is actually working against the naira by auctioning rations of dollars. You will understand that when you auction anything, you are looking for what? Higher and higher prices for whatever you're auctioning. So when the CBN comes out, either on a weekly, daily basis, to bring rations of dollars to auction in the market, okay? Dele, if you are auctioning your phone, who will you sell it to? The person who offers the lowest price, or the person who offers the highest price? The highest price. So if the CBN consciously, on a daily basis or weekly basis, as the case may be, is auctioning dollars, and not plenty of dollars, rations, meager rations of dollars against the naira, it means that the CBN has over the years consciously been working against the naira, because you find that in bringing 200 million to the market and say, okay, banks, you bid for it. Of course, it's going to sell it to the highest bidder. And who are the people who are prepared to pay the highest bids? Those people who have stolen money from the treasury and are just looking for ways of carrying out. The sensible businessman who is a manufacturer will say, if I do that one, could you pay me? There's no, the price will, my materials prices will go up, and so he will bid low. So he will never get it. But the man who is willing to, and the CBN cannot say they don't know this. Okay, so you find that by the process of auctioning the dollars on a weekly basis, the CBN is consciously debasing the naira, especially in an environment where the same central bank accepts that there's excess liquidity. So you now have excess supply of money, which is your problem, and you're trying to mop it up, and then you now bring rations of dollars and you say, let me auction it against this. Is it not, are you not working against your own currency?
All right, Mr. Boyo, at this juncture, we must allow our listeners to join us. Let them be a part of it. We want to listen to what they think about all they've heard you say. Their questions, comments, and of course, if they have advice, it is also welcome. 3 different ways to do that for those joining us for the first time: 0809 8687 You can also use 0909 146 9670.
Okay, you can also reach us via the short code 32120. That's the short code number. Type rock, ROCK, leave a space, type your message, then you include your name and forward it to 32120. If you're on Twitter, just tweet us at Rockcity FM is the Twitter handle. Don't forget the rules. It's 2 minutes to every caller. Just go straight to the point and then leave the stage for others to contribute. No attack on personalities, no speaking out of context. The focus this morning is the economy and not corruption or any other issue that is not on focus this morning. Thank you so much. Let's have this person on the line. Hello, good morning.
Hello. Morning. Good morning. Yes, sir.
Fine.